I'm joined here today by the one, the only, of course, talking about Rob Font to take on Jose Aldo coming up on December 4th. What's going on, sir? How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, it's been a very long time since we talked. I believe it was 3 years when I interviewed you, and to see how far you come, man, it must be pretty crazy for you to look back all these years and see, how the hard work has been paying off.
Yeah, man. It's been a steady grind, but we're in a good spot right now.
Do you take a moment at this point? I mean, there's talks of the title. You're facing all the biggest names in the division. Have you taken sort of a step back and sort of look back on your work, or are you just kind of enjoying the ride?
Yeah, I definitely take a step back and and evaluate, you know what I did, what I've been doing right, what I've been doing wrong, and just kind of like appreciating, all the hard work I put in, but still knowing that there's a lot more that has to be done, and that's so I'm still excited just to kind of like put that behind me and get back to work. But I definitely always go back and watch all my losses, my wins, and see what I'm doing right. You know, even some of my old sparring footages and training footages, I go back and I watch that. So yeah, definitely I go back and watch it. But I'm definitely grateful for all the opportunities and hard work that I put in so far. So
Well, what's the fight you've watched back the most? Like, I'm sure you've watched them a ton of times. Is there one in particular where you could know it frame by frame at this point?
um, not really. I think it's more of like I watched more. I mean, obviously, I would say it was one of my first losses. I think I watched the frame by frame, but now what I'm saying, like I know, like I did exactly when I on the three losses in the UFC. But yeah, no, I mean I wouldn't say I could say frame by frame tell you exactly which fight I probably learned the most. I just it's collectively all of them. I put together like I guess you would say a little game plan, and I kind of like break myself down, and I think I've been doing a good job with it.
Before we get to this fight with Jose Aldo, I know you were telling James Lynch in another interview that they were talking to you about potentially stepping in and facing Jan for the interim title. How frustrating was that whole experience for you? Not being able to fight for the title, even though you get the call and it's like you're right there for it.
Yeah, I mean it was frustrating, but it just wasn't meant to be. I wasn't yeah, I was just dealing with too much at the time. It just was. It'd have been rushed. It wasn't meant to be. And you know, you know, I'm sure. My time will come, especially after this fight. So
Well, when they came to you and said Jose Aldo was next, was that like, were you still excited for that fight? Like to go from the title to, if they'd given you someone you never heard of, it would have been tough. But was Jose Aldo the right kind of opponent to, keep that excitement going?
hell yeah, man. It's Jose Aldo, man. Like this is a big fight. This is if not just as dangerous as any of those two fighters would have been. So yeah, and I'm hyped. I'm excited. This is going to be another one of those fun, entertaining fights, and I just can't wait.
What have you thought about his run at bantamweight? A lot of people were kind of worried about his weight cut since he had trouble at 145. It seems like he's adjusted to the division well. What have you made of his time at bantamweight?
He's looking sharp. He's looking real good. The last fight with Pedro Munoz, he was looking real quick. He's obviously not having trouble with the weight cut. So yeah, this is pretty. I'm in a good spot because again, I got a guy that I'm pretty sure is going to make the weight, and he has a huge name and a huge following behind him. So I just got to go out there and just put him away and get the job done.
So, how do you like the matchup heading into this one? We know Jose Aldo has changed his style over the years. How do you sort of look at this one?
And it's just another tough matchup. He's quick. He's seen you know a million different type of styles and fights and from the 45 and now obviously in the 35 division. He's fought all the top guys, so it's not going to be much that he hasn't seen, but I just feel like he hasn't seen it the way I do it. He just hasn't seen the length. He hasn't felt the accuracy of my jab, and I think it's going to feel just a little different, and I'm just going to find my way into getting this W.
I know everybody's different, but when you head into a fight against someone like Jose Aldo, who's obviously a legend, he's in the GOAT conversation at 145. What kind of effect does that have for you as a fighter? I'm not sure if you're a guy that gets starstruck, but is that something you think about heading into a matchup like this?
Yes and no. It's Jose Aldo, so to not think about like who you're fighting, I think would be foolish. But I think it excites me. It gets me a little extra motivated. To get in there and train because I know what he brings to the table. And I think if anything, it helps me, saying get in the gym because again, he has such a dangerous name and such a huge name that like, I'm not taking this, lightly at all. So yeah, I'm excited, man.
And so we saw that you finally broke through at 135. When people talk about the title, they talk about top contenders, you're always in that conversation. Is there one fight you can kind of pinpoint to that where that kind of started? Because obviously the Cody Garbrandt one was good, but Marlon Moraes, people are talking about you too. Is there one fight that you can sort of pinpoint that that's the one that made you break through?
I think it's the Marlon Moraes fight, and then I think just getting the main event, and then proving myself that I can go all 5 rounds, and against obviously a former champion Cody, I think solidified it. Like, all right, this guy, we got to keep our eye on this guy now.
So we know when you face someone from a different country, sometimes your Instagram tends to get hijacked by people from there. Like they put the flags all over social media, the comments, your DMs, and stuff like that. Have you had that against Jose Aldo? Do you have Brazilian flags everywhere?
No, not yet, not yet, but I'm pretty sure they'll be coming soon.
So how's your social media changed since breaking through? Because I assume like every win, obviously social media grows, but I assume for you at this point, it's got to be pretty big. What does it kind of look like when you get on Instagram now?
Man, I just appreciate the support. There's a few trolls here and there, but just appreciate the support. Following slowly going up, and it's yeah, just again, just appreciate the support. I get a lot of like cool messages and uplifting comments all the time. So
I want to talk about your fight with Cody Garbrandt. 'Cause obviously, it was a great performance. I don't have to tell you that, but what went right in that fight? Like, is this a case of coming in with the right game plan, getting the right feeling out there? Like, what can you sort of pinpoint to for that fight?
a little bit of both. Coming up with the right game plan, staying disciplined, and never really getting into that firefight with him. But at the same time, pushing forward and backing him up at the same time. But never really just brawling out with him. I think was the huge for me. A huge part of the game plan that worked out perfectly. So yeah, and then I think again just the timing and the length and the consistency and the belief I have in my jab. I think it just got annoying for him.
Did it ever sink in that you had beaten a former champion at 135 pounds? Like, did you ever have that moment where it's like, this guy used to have the belt at some point?
Not as I was fighting, but obviously afterwards it was like, oh, all right, like when you sit back and look at it. But as I was fighting, I was just so locked in. Like I just knew it didn't matter who it was or what he had accomplished. It was that night was my night, and there was nothing that he did before, or some type of past experience. So no matter how much he wrestled or boxed or whatever, it wasn't happening from that night.
And so we know Cody Garbrandt, one of the big strengths, obviously, is his power, but he has a lot of speed. Does that kind of help you going into Jose Aldo since people talk about his speed, having faced a fast guy before?
Yeah, I definitely I believe Cody might even be a little quicker than him. Cody was you could tell he's a pure athlete. But you also gotta like put in the experience that Jose Aldo has. So he definitely has. He might not be as fast as Cody, but he might be able to know when to use the speed a little better than Cody.
So how do you prepare for a guy that has a speed like that? Like I know you can't tell us everything about your training camp, but what can you work on to, be prepared for something like that and not get surprised?
It's just constantly keeping this guy guessing. Keeping him guessing and keeping something in his face. You can be fast when nothing's in your face, yeah, and when you're leading the dance. But if you're constantly guessing and I'm always moving and I'm always keeping something in your face, it's going to be a lot harder just to use your pure speed and just you're gonna have to set that up a lot a lot more than just using it and just coming out there and being athletic.
So what does this do for you at this point? This victory over Jose Aldo. We know you're very close to the title. You're on a very good streak going so far. What does this do for you? Because I assume it's got to be one of those things like only big things are next at this point.
Yeah, obviously the plan's going there, put them away as soon as possible, and then it's all number one contenders or obviously for the belt after this. I believe it puts me right in there. I don't want to fight backwards anymore, so it's kind of like let's just get straight to that belt.
Is it frustrating for you being at the top at bantamweight right now? Because we know there's an interim title fight. The champion Aljamain Sterling is dealing with his neck issues. I assume for you watching that, it's got to be very frustrating.
Yes and no. I'm just glad I'm staying busy. I'll be a little frustrated if I was sitting out for a whole another year. So the vision is a little messed up with Aljamain's neck injury, and then the return of T.J. Dillashaw. So it kind of like threw a little hiccup in the vision, but I'm still getting big names. I'm still getting offered fights, so I'm staying busy. So there's not that much I can complain about. Just I gotta just be a little bit patient on this one, get through Jose Aldo, and see where the division's at after this fight.
Are you at this point where a win over Jose Aldo, is it title shot or bust, or is there potential for maybe something else, but still something big?
I honestly, I really do believe it's going to be Jose, then maybe one more, and then a title shot. So I'm thinking like two more fights, and then I'm getting a title shot.
All right, so one last question for you, getting back to this fight against Jose Aldo. It's a boring question, but I ask it at the end of every interview, and I'm sure you've been asked a million times. But how do you see yourself getting the victory in this fight?
At first I was going with second round. But I'm thinking like that third round, TKO.
All right, there we go. Got the official prediction. Thanks so much for the time, man. I really appreciate it. It's been great seeing your rise, and I'm really looking forward to this fight.
I do appreciate you having me on.